I like how I just got lumped into this expert on cybersecurity with you. I enjoy that. Thank you.
Well deserved.
First off, what a great event. I want to thank Goldie and the FedScoop team just for, on behalf of Symantec, allowing us to participate here and giving me such a great person to interview. And Bobby, do you want to maybe expand a little bit on what you're doing at DHS today?
Oh, great, thank you. And the other thing is this venue is unbelievable. So thank you all for taking so much of your time.
We can't see anybody, though.
So I've been with the Department of Homeland Security for about 4.5 years now, and one of the really wonderful things about public service in the Department of Homeland Security is the mission that we execute. It really focuses on helping our federal government understand its responsibility and deliver on that responsibility to secure the data that we have, the systems and the missions that we execute. It's about taking that same focus to our critical infrastructure owners and operators, right? Because there are citizen services delivered by industry that's important for us every day, right? We want the electricity to turn on, we want communications to exist as well. And so we really have to help the community understand the risks that they face in this environment, help them manage their way through, because bad things are going to happen, and when they happen, we want to reduce the impact of that occurring, and then help build capacity in the entire community, because it is something we all are in together, and we're in a paradox in cybersecurity. We're in a paradox in, I think, information technology as a whole, in that we're living in a moment and we're changing the moment all at the same time. And so we really have to focus on how we each take on our level of responsibility in that space.
Yeah, I think David's presentation talking about all the change that's coming in terms of the number of people in the world, the number of devices in the world, and then you look at Kurt's presentation earlier and what Intel's doing around helping organizations fight diseases in the world. When you think about cybersecurity, it's got many definitions to different people, right? And one of the things that you've been involved in, and we as the vendor community have got to participate in, is DHS's efforts around continuous diagnostics and mitigation, and really beginning that process of identifying risks and evaluating what the importance of those risks are. I'd like to get some thoughts from you around how that's going and what you see as some of the critical components of that, and how do you, what's the advice you're giving out to organizations around how to approach this?
Great question. So you think about the work that we've been doing in terms of gaining greater awareness of the missions we're executing, the technology that we use to execute those missions, the data that's available. I'm just phenomenally impressed by all the innovation in how to use this information that's there. And what we're doing with continuous diagnostics and mitigation is trying to employ all of that vision and wisdom in the endpoint component of the cybersecurity landscape. And so wonderful engagement across the federal government in this space with rolling out and working with departments and agencies, helping them understand how all of the pieces come together. We think, though, and the point was made earlier, I think, by one of the previous speakers, that one of the most important things that we have to do is have a lexicon, right? We have to have a way to talk about this situation, a way to talk about this problem. And the cybersecurity framework gives us the beginning of that lexicon. And so really understanding what are your critical missions, what are the resources that support those missions, what is the right security domain for all of those pieces, what data do I have to support it, and how do I prioritize the work in order to accomplish that. The framework gives us the first step on that journey in a way that is very common across a multitude of industries and participants.
Yeah, I had an opportunity this morning to listen to Ari Schwartz talk, and he said something similar in terms of one of the key things I thought that he said that was really important was that part of that framework is making sure that you understand where your information is and how you're accessing it. So as you look at how things are evolving, one of the things I feel is it becomes not only important as to how you're using that information and how you're accessing that information, but I like the way that David put it earlier, how you're remixing that information to draw intelligence to that. How do you see that evolving in terms of how we use technology better to control some of that?
So it's really, as I said, where we are in information technology is a moment of profound paradoxes. And when I think about the information that's available to us and the decisions that need to be made and how we're going to marry the two together, we have a real obligation in government to be more clear and transparent about what we are doing and what we intend to do, and when that changes, because it will, right? When we gain new insights as a nation around something, our use of that information will change to gain even further insight. We must be transparent about that as well. And that creates a really difficult paradox for the cybersecurity community as a whole. Right? We grew up out of keeping everything private, keeping everything secret, operational security and encryption, and that's our heritage. And we must do those things when and how it's appropriate, but we must also be very transparent about what we're doing and how and when we're doing it. And that, I think, is really an important part of how we build the trust with the American people, how we build the trust in between government entities, whether it be state governments and the federal government, whether it be different parties of the federal government, and how we build trust between the private sector and the public sector in that space. And it requires a lot of collaboration and a lot of conversations, but
yeah, trust is becoming, I think, an evolving concept for a lot of people, especially now with government, the way that we're allowing businesses and people to access so much information that the government in many cases is really required to manage and make available and protect. And if you look at things like data.gov, the amount of industry that's just emerging out of the wealth of this information and the way we're compiling it. But it also creates a cybersecurity issue, right? Because people, even though this information may be available and free of access, it still has to be reliable, right? So from a perspective of how do you put the right safeguards around technology or data, if you will, that's supposed to be free and readily available, what are some of the challenges you're seeing there in terms of how the government's addressing that?
So we've sort of come full circle in this discussion. When you look at the sort of strategy of the U.S. government and the strategy that the department is delivering on, it is really about enabling the data, the metadata, right, the data about the environment sufficient for us to make the decisions on access and usability and releasability and other mechanisms. Because we want that insight into what the data is, how it's available, and how it's being used, such that we can promote even more use of it. Again, it's this space where you're in today and tomorrow at the same time in here. Because what we find is this data, the remixing is a perfect description of it. Right? The data is being put together to answer questions we never even realized needed to be answered when the data was collected, right? And so it is, reflecting back to David's briefing, it is one of those places where as government, we are in that space that no one else is. Right? That's our job, is to be in that space where no one else is. Because if there were a market around some of these things, somebody would be there. And so as we didn't understand a question that someone else thinks about, we should embrace their thinking about this problem and find a way to have others also build insight into the information and recognize we're going to be in an uncomfortable place when that happens.
Well, you know, the last area I'd like to kind of touch on with you, and I got a funny story about it a little bit. You know, yeah, well, so, you know, everybody's talking about this Internet of Things, right? And they talk about all the disruptive technologies, and mobility's been part of that buzzword, cloud's been part of that buzzword, Internet of Things have been part of that. And you really don't understand what those disruptive technologies are possible of doing. You know, Kurt highlighted one example. I'll give you one. In our offices in Herndon, we have a group of analysts that work on techniques and approaches to build into our threat intelligence environment. Well, we thought it was a great idea to bring one of those automated coffee machines into our environment. And I won't say the name of the company that gave it to us, but they're on every corner, just about in every city. And they give you those great little lattes.
Did they just bring eggnog?
Yeah, they brought it all
back?
in, right? We got the pumpkin spice, we've got everything.
Okay.
Well, you know, the device plugs into our network, and that's how it communicates when it needs to be filled back up with our latte medicine and all the other things. Well, a couple of guys on our 6th floor thought it would be fun to hack into it and reverse all the different things that you could order. So you think about that, and you know, earlier we heard about how accounts can be hacked. I'm curious, you know, I had the opportunity down at AFCEA to hear General Wilson talk from 24th Air Force about how the networks are just growing so much and they're trying to prepare for all this Internet of Things. When you think about all these disruptive technologies, Internet of Things, mobility, cloud, how is that? I mean, there must be some significant challenges for you guys in terms of how you're defining what cybersecurity is going to be across all of those.
So I'm going to argue with the premise of your question a bit,
okay.
Right? We in DHS aren't defining cybersecurity for all those things, right? We as a community have to define what cybersecurity is for all those things, and we are clearly a voice in doing that. But it really speaks to the importance of all of us recognizing our role. We have long since defined our roles in our personal safety. And we are working now, I think, as a nation in this, in the way that we have, you know, in the government constructs that we all love, are working to define our roles in this space. Because you're right, we are connecting things to networks at speeds that no one had, I think, appreciated when the network was built. My mom always hates it when I use this example, so I'm going to get in trouble today. And that is, you know, my daughter is my mom's tech support, right? That's how that relationship works. And so, you know, homes have networks. They have networks provided by consumer entities. Businesses have enterprises, and the demands on the enterprises are measured against consumer expectations, not enterprise expectations. And so we have to, as a cybersecurity community, really embrace this and not fight it. And use that power, that scale, that approach in order to further secure the capability. Because it is this, you know, is this exponential problem, and we haven't found that asymptote in that, boy, the math geek. We haven't found the line where we stop going up at this incredible pace. And so we should stop fighting that, and we should just start embracing the scale.
That's great. I'm going to shift for the last question here. I'm just going to shift a little bit. You mentioned the NIST framework, and there's a lot of efforts going on around how to offer you know, standards and recommendations around cybersecurity. One of the things I am really excited about, focusing on the federal business for Symantec, one of the challenges you always have is that enterprise and commercial companies in America don't always embrace some of the standards and requirements that the federal government has for their agencies. It's great to see this framework being picked up by banking industry, by the retail industry, by the manufacturing industry. I believe that that's going to improve overall the technologies and the focus around some of these standardizations. Just like your view on, you know, seeing a notification like AIG come out and say that the framework is going to be the basis for cybersecurity insurance. How does that make you feel, seeing outside of government be affected by a lot of the things you're participating in?
So it's really, really gratifying to have participated in the framework development process and to see where folks are moving. We in the department have really been focused on just that problem, on helping associations, owners and operators, and other change agents in the community recognize the value of this common lexicon. And so whether or not a company likes a particular NIST publication or not is certainly up to that company. But the great value in all of this in the framework is it was a way for us as a community to find ourselves, each of us, to find ourselves in it, and to find the relevant product in that compendium, that third part of the framework. Find the relevant product in that works for your industry, for your organization, and bring that to the forefront. And so I've really been very pleased with the community engagement around this at all levels, at the technical owner-operator level within a particular industry, at the sector-wide level. You know, there are framework, we're working with sectors to help produce sort of framework roadmaps, how to help a company who isn't there. Small and medium business focuses within the cybersecurity tool producing community, right? How does what you produce map to this thing, and great adoption in that space. The National Association of Corporate Directors has done work for boards of directors to help teach them the questions they need to ask. So it's just really been overwhelming how positive that has taken. And this has been a lot of hard work to get to this point, and we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us, and I think the real proof is in our continuing to understand what's working and what's not, and continuing to recognize that this must continue to be an evolving conversation.
Well, I thank you for this opportunity, and I can tell you that from working with you several times now, it really gives me great comfort to see people like yourself and David and others in government who are dedicating their services to help improve the delivery of mission that you give to our constituents. So not only thank you for your time today, but thank you for your service to our nation. Thank you.
Thank you.